Good evening. Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight as we continue our 38th season of River Styx at the Tavern. Well, 38 years of River Styx, 2 months at the Tavern. This evening we'd like to feature 2 unique voices, though both in many ways Southern voices, poet Janice N. Harrington and fiction writer George Singleton, both of whom have books for sale, courtesy of Left Bank Books right over there at that table. I know some of y'all have availed yourselves to these books already, but there are more right over there. Along with newest issues of River Styx, our Kerberos hoodies and t-shirts. Now that it's getting a little chilly, we'll bring out the Kerberos hoodies, which everybody loves, and microfiction contest flyers and other assorted River Styx stuff. All right, without further ado, Janice N. Harrington has a gift for wringing gutsy significance from ordinary and unlikely things. A personal significance as well as metaphorical or cultural. Her most recent collection of poems, The Hands of Strangers, Poems from the Nursing Home, was published by BOA Editions last year and includes bedpans, room dividers, thermometers, charts, and false teeth cleaner. And this poet finds unexpected power and poignancy in all of them. And even when she strays from the nursing home setting, she accomplishes similar results. When, for example, she stumbles on a dead mole during a nature hike or into a grassy field. Recipient of a 2007 National Endowment for the Arts, Literature Fellowship in Poetry, Janice N. Harrington is the author of 2 books of poetry, as well as award-winning children's fiction. She has worked as a public librarian, or as we say in Southern Indiana, librarian, and is a professional storyteller, performing at festivals around the country, including the National Storytelling Festival. She currently teaches in the creative writing program at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana. Please welcome Janice N. Harrington.
Thank you. Thank you to River Styx and to all of you. I understand that there's some competition tonight. I saw a dog leave the hotel wearing a Cardinals t-shirt. So I knew I was with diehard fans. Thank you also to Left Bank Books for having all of our books there. Really appreciate that. And Richard Newman, everybody's wonderful and wonderful to be here. I think I'm finding these connections between George and I, which the South, and I think that's where I'll start. The poems I've brought you this evening are all going to be situated in different places. So we're going to go to a South that's very, very, very old. We're going to go back 40, 50 years, a South that's long gone. And we're going to leave the black dirt of Missouri. All right, I was going to say the black dirt of Illinois, but it occurred to me Missouri may have red dirt. What is the dirt here like?
Some's red, some's black.
Some red, some black. In Illinois, it's all good black sod. So we're going to leave that and go to Alabama and red dirt. And this poem is What There Was. Pine, catalpa, pin oak, persimmon, but not tree. Hummingbird, hoot owl, martin, crow, but not bird. Canis, honeysuckle, coxcomb, rose, but not flower. Wood smoke, corn, dust, outhouse, but not stench. A spider spinning in a rain barrel, the silver dipper by the back porch, tadpoles shimmering against a concrete bank, but not silence. A cotton row, a bucket lowered into a well, a red dirt road, a winging crow, but not distance. A rooster crowing, cows lowing in the evening, wasp humming beneath the eaves, hounds baying, hot grease, but not music. My mother running away at 15. My grandmother lifting a truck to save a life. An uncle at Pearl Harbor. Webster sitting at the back of the bus when he looked as white as they did, but not stories. The entrails of a slaughtered sow, the child born with a goat's face, the cousin laid on a railroad track, the fire that burned it all, but not death. This poem, a snuff tin sated with the hair of all our dead, my mother's nighttime talks with her dead father, my great-grandmother's clothes passed down, but not memory. Have any of y'all ever had a fried apple pie? It's the quickest way I know of to have a coronary arrest, at least the way my grandmother made them, because it required copious amounts of lard. But her fried apple pies were delicious. But in order to make a real good fried apple pie, you need dried apples. This poem is drying apples. Kneeling, she leans onto one hand, and with the other pushes apple slices and rings of apple, spreading them wide across flattened flour sacks beneath the heat and desiccant air. Even sweetness is labored for. Even this moment, disturbed only by distant sawing, only by a crow's desolation, and by her hand moving out, around, and out again, unsettling the morning hour. Earlier, she snapped Winnish apples from their stems and dropped them into a bushel basket. She washed them with well water, throwing aside the ones that floated, the ones too wormy. She sat in a straight-backed chair beneath a pin oak with paring knife and 5-gallon tub, curling away the blotchy peel, stabbing seeds and woody stem, cutting away the spoil and all that was not pap or apple. Now unworried, she presses a papery sliver against her tongue, holding its wedge between brown lips, an epistle that life is reach and bend, is arm, is leg, is back, is imperfect, is rot and worm, is too small, is not enough. It is bitten, it is chewed and sucked, it is swallowed or spat out, and it is sweet, it is sweet, it is sweet. Now she spreads apples atop a shed she built herself, atop its slanted roof, spreading and smoothing pats of apply flesh that will wither and dry, wither and brown. She will shuffle the pulpy ruffles into cotton sacks, reduced and ear-like, ears filling both palms, relics of a martyred saint, or the wizened tongues of castrati singing, hush, hush, hush. But no, they're only apples. Only dried apples in a flour sack, light and easy to carry, a bounty set aside, preserved for need and long winter, for an appetite that craves splendor, not its shape, but its remembrance. Families all have their stories, don't they? If I came to your house, I'm certain that there are stories. Some of them you don't want people to know. And some stories, you only know little pieces. Or sometimes it's the same fragments get repeated over and over again. And there was a story that my mother told, and it was about a sister that she had that died. A child that was born deformed, and she had the face of a goat. If she had lived. If she had lived, the goat-faced girl, she would have seen her reflection in the waters of this fish pond, and held its white-fleeced lilies beneath her whiskered chin. If she had lived, she would have walked in moonlight, pulling eel from lamp-black waters while owls told their old spook story. Who'll cook for you? Who'll cook for you? If she had lived, she would have stooped beneath the day's hem, back bent and arched, chopping cotton as the minutes fell like hoe blades, their sweated strokes sounding thump, thump, thump. Living, she would have proved that a colored woman lay once with the goat god, that a colored woman held fairness between her thighs and loved him, their fierce rut amidst yellow-eyed asters and red sand, their kindled groins beside the nest of fire ants. She lay beneath him, and they loved, and they loved. Her flesh drinking the clabbered sperm. This happened to a colored woman in Alabama, and she gave birth to a goat-faced girl. They say she had the breast of a grown woman. They say she was covered in hair. They say she had a goat's face, this child deformed. The mother said the baby was born with the face of fear, that ripe with this child, she'd seen a goat unexpectedly, and it frightened her. A goat and this warning that a woman must be careful. Vision gives birth to itself. The baby died. Perhaps it was born too old. Perhaps a goat heart is not strong enough. The baby died, and the mother buried her beside the garden. Or was it the fish pond? No, the baby is here in the Negro cemetery, her little fingers curled inward, grasping. Later, the mother will cradle her arms against her chest, her breast spilling milk. She will walk into the darkness, remembering her child, the goat-faced child, the goat-faced girl. The hooves of tears mark her cheeks, but she will not wipe them. She stands in the dark, a colored woman, crooning, crooning, crooning. And a wind comes, gentle. A wind blows across her skin, across her lips, across the ends of her fingers, making music, the sound of pipes. In Alabama, a colored woman bore a deformed baby. No, a colored woman bore the child of a goat. No. A colored woman is grieving. Her goat-faced girl, her baby is dead. That is the song. Sing it. Say a colored woman is grieving her baby girl. Sing it. But this all happened long ago. The child is dead. The woman is dead. They are gone, girl, woman, goat. Only the song remains. Only ruminant memory, taking our lives in its tough mouth. When you grow up in the country, my mother always says there's not much to do, though my mother found lots of trouble to fall into. But the big events in the countryside were revival meetings. And my mother talked about how they would go out late at night after the work in the fields when it was a little bit cooler. And I think about those revival meetings. Through the cooling dark they walk, Lillian, Webster, Riley, Anna, MacArthur, and Yule, returning from Heavenly Father and yes, Jesus, from paper fans with little brown girls and Sunday bonnets. From the communion of sour juice and crackers. Ah, well, from church mothers in nurses' uniforms and reels of sweat spilling from black brows. Have mercy on us, Father. Look down upon us, Father, and give us your blessing in Jesus' name. Above a darkened bough, a wing beats, and in the pitchy shadows, crickets shrill, and a frog repeats, repeats, repeats. Maybe Anna holds her father's hand. Maybe the boys tussle and pitch stones into the darkness while their mother watches, humming and holding her Bible more firmly than an axe handle. Or maybe they go weary on in quiet. It is only their steps you hear, only shifting sand, only a rural route a family walks while the night begins its long sermon. And the miles go by, and the miles go by. If an owl calls from that darkness, then someone will die. If a hound keens one long, longing vowel, they will shudder. If a star plummets, that too will have meaning. This is faith, the road that takes them home. The last one that I'll read from my first book, which is Even the Hollow My Body Made Is Gone, is Shaking the Grass. And nothing like watching a poet drink water. It's very exciting, isn't it? I thought maybe I should do it again so you'd see if poets do it differently. Shaking the grass. Evening, and all my ghosts come back to me, like red banty hens to catalpa limbs, and chicken-wired hutches clucking, clucking, and falling at last into their head-under-wing sleep. I think about the field of grass I lay in once between Omaha and Lincoln. It was summer, I think. The air smelled green, and wands of windy green, a sway, swayed over me. I lay on green sod like a prairie snake, letting the sun warm me. What does a girl think about alone in a field of grass, beneath a sky as bright as an Easter dress, beneath a green wind? Maybe I have not shaken the grass. All is vanity. Maybe I never rose from that green field. All is vanity. Maybe I did no more than swallow deep, deep breaths and spill them out into story. All is vanity. Maybe I listened to the winds sighing and shivering, spinning a whirl amidst the blue stems and green lashes. Oh, my beloved, oh, my beloved. I lay in a field of grass once and then went on. Even the hollow my body made is gone. My next book, my newest book, is in an entirely different place. It would have been mid to late 70s. I was a nurse's aide in 2 nursing homes. One was a private nursing home, and one was the county nursing home. So this book is drawing on memories, drawing on things I saw, things I heard. My mother was also a nurse's aide, so also her memories and things that she said. And I think of this book as a collection of stories, a collection of people's stories. So I want to share some of those stories with you. This first one, which is Pietà, is about a nurse's aide. And I want to say that I'm talking about nurses' aides, not nurses. Nurses' aides are the ones that do all the work. Pietà. She stoops, this should-have-retired aide, and in her polished and repolished shoes and white uniform, lifting this fetid shape, the body of a wordless man who only groans, his eyes startled into clear ice, his blue milk skin, blue veined and blue bruised, eases against her chest. His brow leans into her shoulder, his lips press her uniform's rough pleats and leave damp wings traced in spittle above her breast. although she does not notice, and straining bears the weight as the years have taught, knees bent, back levered into straightness, breathing in, breathing out, muscles tight. She lowers him as you would lower an overfilled basin, settling its shallow wash gently, leaving even the refracted light undisturbed. There was a woman there who had cataracts, and she couldn't see anything really. And the aid in the story is not me. This is called pinch. In a room bright with sunlight, an aide feeds parade to an old woman in a wheelchair. The old woman, blinded by cataracts, rolls the brownish mash between her lips. The aide scrapes the woman's lips and chin with a spoon edge and pushes the spillings between her lips again. But the old woman does not want to eat, or maybe needs more time to swallow, or perhaps does not like the brown mash, and instead she spits. The aide spoons more mash between her lips, and the old woman, reaching, snatches the skin on the aide's bare arm and squeezes it hard between two ruddy fingers, smiling. She thinks by this small violence that she has won, that she is the victor of the contest, not to be ignored, not defenseless. But this aide pinches her back, fierce and sharp. The old woman widens opaque eyes, straining to see this scorpion, this scissor-beaked bird, this all and mirror image, this enemy. But in her eyes are cloud banks, splinters of dazzle and shadow. She sees nothing and feels pinpricks, ice, broken glass, and hate. They spar, pinch for pinch, until the eyes draw their curtains, until at last there comes a cry that no one hears but the aide, who takes the tray and taps the spoon against the glass and clears the parade splatter. Whatever is uneaten remains so. Whatever hungers goes unfed. Amidst a ward of schizophrenics, strokes, Parkinson's sufferers, birth defects, colostomies, radiation burns, heart disease, psoriasis, diabetes, cancer, syphilis, Huntington's chorea, hunting accidents, dementias, arthritics, amputations, cataracts, mastectomies, retardations, depressions, blindness, this. An old married couple admitted together, both invalid, and yet she watched him as a mother coddles her child's first steps up the school stair. She watched, weighing their efforts, doing what the aides have left undone. She soothed his patchy hair, locked the buttons of his sweater, swabbed the gummy matter from his eyes, and erased the sluggish tracks of spittle. There now, that's better, isn't it? That's my fella. That's my boy. Though he did no more than nod and seep a thready drool. At night, the aides rolled their beds together. He lay curled asleep while she attended, stretching thin arms through the bed rails to snug his blankets and kiss her fingers against his cheek. Later, waking, she called the aides, worried that his bed was soiled, that his blanket was not enough and not tucked correctly. Are his feet cold? He shouldn't be cold. Or once calling because she had soaked his sheets, trying to tend his dry lips with a plastic cup. The story ends as you know it will. One died before the other. When I was writing this book, it didn't become clear to me why I was writing it until I found a little bit of information in one of my diaries. So I've been working on this book for a long time, and I thought, I've always kept a diary. I thought maybe there's something in one of those diaries about those years that I could use for a poem. And the first thing I would tell you is never, ever, ever go back and read your old diaries. It should not be done. And I didn't find anything, nothing, except this little nugget. May Ingalls died yesterday. No family, no friends, no possessions, just a room provided by the county. No pastor, no nurses, no anything. No book will ever give her a sentence. August 11th, 1977. May Ingalls. May Ingalls died, and she died of scurvy. May Ingalls died, and she died of sorrow. May Ingalls died, and she died like this. Oh, 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 oh. May Ingalls died, or maybe she didn't. Tomorrow, ring bells, burn effigies of crones, declare it May Ingalls Day. Let mothers name their babies May or Ingalls. Let astrologers rename Orion's belt and call it May Ingalls Garter. Let believers see her face on mildewed wallpaper in a Days Inn in Biloxi. Let biologists name a newly discovered orchid May Ingalls, or a moth or a deep sea squid not seen since the Pliocene era. Let poets write in the form of May Ingalls, small and plain and common. May you travel with 30 other pilgrims to find her grave, but not finding it, may you open a boutique to sell May Ingalls memorabilia and sack lunches to tourists who want to lie in the county bed where May Ingalls died. May you live your days as happy as May Ingalls. May you whisper before pressing your tongue against the slope of your beloved's neck. May Ingalls. Oh, May Ingalls. May Ingalls plucked the feathers of the last Lord God bird. Yesterday, anthropologists discovered the image of a small woman leaping amidst a herd of antelope. They have called her May Ingalls. May Ingalls has 7 overdue library books. Below your right kidney, the doctor will find proof of May Ingalls. Yes, you are in good health. On a playground in Alabama, black girls clap their hands. They've made a rhyme for May Ingalls. And you're going to help me. When I point at you, you say Ingalls. Oh, May Ingalls.
Ingalls.
You're going to say it like you mean it. Oh, May Ingalls.
Ingalls.
Looks like shingles.
Ingalls.
Her bones go jingle. Ingalls. Her toenails tingle. Ingalls. Her daddy stole a pudding. Ingalls. He made your mama cry. Ingalls. Now they're going to hang him on the 4th of July. The water laps May and May against the shore. The earth answers, and the wind, and the boy swinging his toes above the dock, all with the same glad syllable, May and May and May. Afterward, the boy will snatch a fish from the dark water. He'll split its belly and find a golden ring. Lifting the ring, he'll cry, May Ingalls. Some say a small woman now stands beside death. She touches those whom death chooses. She lifts the dead from their tangled veins as if their bodies were beds they lay in for too long. Some say that before dying, if you whisper the woman's name, death will slow, surprised that you remember a woman without family or monument or possession. Death will slow, and you will have a moment, and maybe another moment more. May Ingalls. May Ingalls. May Ingalls.
Thank you, Janice. May Ingalls. So we're going to take a very short break, and we'll be back with Mr. Singleton. And I saw David Robinson do this in 2006 when the Cardinals were in the World Series. Not between movements, but between pieces. So it's 1-1, the bottom of the third inning, San Francisco's due up. So if David Robinson can do it, I can do it. What the hell? All right. We'll be right back with George Singleton. I've been reading George Singleton stories for years, and a number of them have appeared in River Styx issues. In fact, I was flabbergasted when he sent us a story just over the transom. Like, really? George Singleton? Okay. And we read it, and we didn't have to reject it. It was really good. Because I hate rejecting work from people who I like. But here are only a few of the things I will never be able to think of the same after reading George Singleton's stories. Car leasing companies, pierced tongues, crematoriums, fossils, scuba gear, and those tube-shaped plastic billowing blowy things in front of car dealerships and mattress stores. Singleton inhabits a world that's more Southern gonzo than Southern Gothic. His stories straddling the line between humor and sorrow, or the ridiculous and poignant. Singleton is the author of 8 works of fiction, including his forthcoming book of stories, Stray Decorum. When's that supposed to be out? It's out. It's right over there. Oh, duh, the big blue book that says Stray Decorum. All right. His newest book being Stray Decorum, just out now with Zank Books. A 2009 Guggenheim Fellow, Singleton currently teaches fiction writing at South Carolina's Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities. In a recent interview, The Rumpus characterized Singleton as, quote, a literary hellraiser, to which he responded, Gilles Deleuze believed that every society needed a madman so we could feel better about ourselves. I do my best to fill that role. Please welcome George Singleton, who will have no trouble making us feel better about ourselves.
Okay, thank you, Richard, and I'm glad to meet everybody here. Everybody's I've never been to St. Louis. I've been in a lot of America, and this is a beautiful city, but do you hear that noise? It's like a helicopter behind me or something. I'm going to kill Richard for having me follow Janice, because this reminds me of like one time when, you know that story about Jerry Lee Lewis when they said, oh, you'll be opening for Buddy Holly. And Jerry Lee Lewis said, I don't really think that's a good idea. And they said, no, you got to do it. So then he played like all hell, lit his piano on fire, went up to Buddy Holly at the end and said, stage is yours, fella, like that. That's how I feel right now. Thank you, Buddy, Jerry Lee Lewis. Thank you so much. This story, I've read this story in near where I live in South Carolina. There's maybe a couple references to, let's say, my ex-governor, Mark Sanford. You remember the great hiker? And I went to college with that guy, and there's a reference to maybe the Bush administration. People left because I live in South Carolina. So just remember, this is 100%, this is the narrator talking, not me. The story's called Vaccination. My dog, Tapeworm Johnson, needed legitimate veterinary attention. It had been 2 years since she received annual shots. I read somewhere that an older dog can overdose on all these vaccinations, and I have found, I share this information with every dog owner I meet, that if you keep your pet away from rabid foxes, raccoons, skunks, bats, and people whose eyes rotate crazy in their sockets, then the chances of your own dog foaming at the mouth diminishes drastically. I also believe that dogs don't need microchips embedded beneath their shoulder blades if you keep the dog leashed or in the house or with the truck windows rolled up when you drive around showing the dog farm animals living in pastures. I brought this up to Dr. Page one time, back 4 years earlier when Tapeworm Johnson was somewhere between 8 and 9 years old. Tapeworm showed up at my door one morning back when I was married and living in a regular house. Her ribs as visible as anything you'd order down at Clem and Lida's barbecue shack on Scenic Highway 11. Her paw pads split open from, I assumed, days traveling from wherever her conscienceless owner dropped her off. Tapeworm looked coon or bird dog mostly, though she'd never pointed over the years I've known her, which might explain a stupid hunter letting her loose without a collar and so on. Seeing as nothing seemed hopeful in the marriage, I let the dog inside, took her to Dr. Page's ex-colleague, Dr. Lloyd Leck, who overdosed on horse tranquilizers a while back, though people in the community say they were only ostrich tranquilizers, seeing as Dr. Leck dealt with the more entrepreneurial ranchers who had moved in to raise emus, llamas, and the like. Dr. Leck said the dog had tapeworms. When I had signed in, I put Jane Doe down for Tapeworm Johnson's name. When we scheduled a second visit for a month later so the dog could put on weight and get vaccinated for diseases I felt sure got made up by the American Veterinary Association or the dog pill and serum manufacturers of the United States, I told the vet to put down Tapeworm for a name. What the hell? There are worse possible names. The dog could have had a blocked urethra or mange. I have a medical doctor I call Bob. I have an ophthalmologist I call Henry. There's a chiropractor who lives a mile down the road from me in one of those fake log houses built from a kit. I call him Snap Crackle Pop. I refer to professors as teachers, which seems to piss them off. I went to college with our governor, and I call him Fuck Twig now, just as I did back then. So in case anyone thinks I disparage veterinarians who have to know all the bones of about every animal ever invented, not just the 206 of humans, understand that I call Dr. Page, and before he couldn't take it anymore and offed himself with giant bird tranquilizers, I called Dr. Leck. Tapeworm got out of my truck without any aid, and she led me to the clinic's door. One woman sat in the waiting room. She said, "Look, Loretta, you have a friend. Look at the pretty doggy," in a high-pitched voice normally used by mothers talking to nonverbal babies or school nurses to special ed first graders who shit their pants and wish they hadn't. We have a lot of problems these days, and I think that making it a felony to speak in such a manner might eradicate gun violence in the future. When I signed in, I looked down to read Holly for the owner's name and Loretta for her dog. Under reason for visit, Holly had written toenails. Under Tapeworm's reason for visit, I wrote down change oil filter. I figured someone later would see it and then ask Dr. Page if she could check the Jack Russell's oil. I felt Tapeworm tugging toward Loretta, and when the two dogs' noses touched, they wagged their tails. Holly said, "See, they can be friends." I said, "That's good." Holly said, "Janie said she's running late. She's back in there in surgery. Somebody's dog got shot in the eye. Can you imagine? Janie said it's an emergency. She's going to have to amputate the eye." Holly looked normal and friendly enough. She might have been late 30s and wore hippie clothing that somehow matched: a thin cotton lavender skirt, a black and gray tie-dyed sleeveless blouse, those sandals that cost way too much money because they supposedly offer arch support. I didn't think amputate was the correct term for an eyeball, but didn't say anything. Holly wasn't wearing a brassiere. She didn't shave her armpits, which didn't bother me, seeing as the majority of women living on this planet, contrary to popular American Christian belief, didn't shave anywhere, just like most men. Holly had her hair braided 3 times in long pigtails, though, which made me scared that she might have been one of those second ready people who'd moved into the area, ready in a second for the second coming. I figured a second ready woman might keep 3 braids in homage to the Trinity. Homage might not be the correct term. For some reason, I said, I've known one-eyed dogs, and they adapt. They get around fine. I sat down on the bench perpendicular to Holly. Our dogs continued to be friendly. I'm Holly, and this is Loretta, she said. Hey, Holly, I'm Edward Johnson. This is Wanda. Who's going to tell a braless woman you got a dog named Tapeworm? Wanda was my ex-wife's name. I've never seen you here, Holly said. You look like a level-headed person. I'm always on the lookout for level-headed people. By level-headed, I mean people who love animals and maybe don't record reality TV shows to watch over and over. I thought about fake speaking in tongues, but the last time I'd done that as a joke, somebody called 911 and said I underwent an epileptic seizure. This happened at a hardware store where an employee told me that if God wanted a nut and bolt to rust together beyond loosening, then I shouldn't interfere with WD-40. It would be kind of a coincidence if you and I came into the vet clinic at the same time more than once, I said. Holly said, Ed or Eddie, or is it Edward all the time? I said Edward all the time. I didn't say how Wanda wasn't Wanda all the time. I kind of daydreamed way ahead to Holly calling for Tapeworm. Wanda, Wanda, come here, Wanda. And how I'd have to say how my dog must have lost her hearing. Holly slid over on her bench in my direction. Tapeworm began panting and then jumped up beside me. I looked over to the counter and wondered if Dr. Page no longer had a receptionist, then figured that maybe she needed help in the surgery room. Holly said, Edward, one time I had a boyfriend. I don't have a man in my life anymore, maybe because of what I'm about to tell you. And I called him Edward out of nowhere, just like in that Led Zeppelin song, you know, about calling out a different guy's name. I didn't even know anyone named Edward back then. Maybe I was having a vision about the future. She smiled. I have a tattoo of 2 dung beetles going up the back of my thighs. Maybe one day I'll go to Africa and see some real ones. I made a mental note to open my dictionary to the non section when I got home, so maybe I'd finally learn the correct spelling of non sequitur. I said, I have a tattoo of a chameleon, but it keeps changing colors and blending right in with my skin. Dr. Page, maybe every veterinarian in the world, didn't have much taste or imagination in art. She had gotten a new Norman Rockwell reproduction, her 9th, and it involved a dog and a little boy, just like all the others. If I were a veterinarian, I'd nail Jackson Pollock posters on the wall so people would think, well, at least my dog didn't look that bad after getting hit out on the highway. There were also rows of Hummel-like dog figurines placed in a shallow figurine display case, Dog Fancy and Bark magazines scattered about, and a canine weight guide chart tacked to the door that led into the examination rooms. The TV remained tuned to Animal Planet. An upright plastic holder housed pamphlets for lost pet medical insurance. We should go out and get some coffee afterwards, Holly said. We could drive over to Lorinda's diner. We could sit in the parking lot and let our dogs play together. I had work to do. I said, okay. We should go out and get a drink, she said. Holly looked at her wristwatch. I'll be in there 5 minutes. How long will it take for Wanda? As long as she's not getting an operation, let's say 15 minutes. And then by the time we get to, say, Gus's place, it'll be 11. That's not too early. Gus lets dogs come inside. Dr. Page came out wearing a surgeon shower cap. She said, what up, Edward? Hey, Tapeworm Johnson. She looked at Holly and said, come on back now. Who is this one? Holly didn't say anything about the Tapeworm Johnson reference. She dragged Loretta into the back. I stood up, let go of Tapeworm's leash, and went outside to look in Holly's car. She drove a VW Bug, of course. She left the windows down, which meant, in my mind at least, it was okay for me to look in her backseat floorboard and glove compartment for pharmaceutical evidence in the way of lithium. I found dog hair. I'm no forensic evidence expert, but I felt pretty sure that I discovered wiry white hair, long copper hair, short black hair, short gray hair, long liver-colored hair, and so on. It didn't all come off of Loretta, is what I'm saying. Did I want to spend an afternoon with a crazy dog woman? That was the question. I found Grateful Dead cassette tapes and CDs. At first I thought I discovered a roach in the ashtray, but upon smelling it, then eating it, I learned that it more than likely ended up being the remnants of a hand-rolled American Spirit cigarette. Did I want to get involved in any way with a woman addicted to the evils of nicotine, like I'd been addicted with cigarettes all the way up until the day after Wanda took off, leaving me alone with Tapeworm Johnson? I wanted to find a grocery list, but didn't find one. I wanted to find a couple books. If she had a copy of Don Quixote, I'd have thought I'd finally met my soulmate. If she had a number of those self-help books or memoirs written by the brainwashed cast of aliens involved in the Bush administration, I'd have known, okay, everybody flee, go ahead and run off. I'd have known to have brought a wooden stake along with me to the bar. But I found no reading material. Did I want to sit around in a bar with two dogs that might have been as literate as Holly? I got out of the Volkswagen, reached the veterinarian's front door, turned around, rolled the windows up all the way on my pickup, and locked both doors so no one could rifle through my belongings. When I got back inside the waiting room, I found Tapeworm stretched out on her back legs, eating all the dog biscuits in a bowl between the registration ledger and a doorknob used to tether dogs. Tapeworm turned her head, kept her mouth open, and looked at me with bird dog eyes that said nothing but, "You caught me. I'm sorry, but this is who I am." I said, "Bad dog, Wanda." Section break. Holly came out with Loretta, and right away I noticed not as much clacking on the tile floor. That Dr. Page must have been the queen of clipping dog nails, I thought. Holly said to the vet, "I'll see you next week to do the hind nails." There's a guy with a dog. That's cool and a little bit scary. Holly said to the vet, "I'll see you next week to do the hind nails." "Okie dokie," said Dr. Page. She didn't wear the shower cap anymore. To me, she said, "Come on back, Edward." I said, "I owe you some milk bones." "I'll be at Gus's place. Come on down there, Edward," Holly said. She leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. Who does that? When do women start kissing strangers on the cheek? And she patted Tapeworm on the head. The dog Loretta licked Tapeworm on the muzzle. I tried to say I might not be there, seeing as I have some honeysuckle to gather, but I couldn't get it out. I'm no psychologist, but maybe I didn't want Holly to know that I wove baskets for a living. Oh, I can do sweetgrass or river cane or white oak or even pine needle baskets, but my best work, and the ones that sell at craft shows and galleries, is honeysuckle vine. I learned how to do it from my father's sister. She spent time in a nut house in Milledgeville, Georgia. Tapeworm led me into the examination room. Dr. Page kept a frightening poster up on one wall of dog eyeball scenarios, like glaucoma in various stages. I didn't like it. On another wall, she kept a poster of a normal dog's alimentary canal above a poster of dog mouths with tooth and gum diseases. I said Tapeworm's fine in all ways except the shots needed. I'd had dreams about Dr. Page, I have to admit. Who has dreams about his veterinarian? I wondered if my dog had veterinarian dreams. I know we always see dogs paddling their paws and whining in their sleep, and we say, hey, the dog's dreaming about chasing rabbits. Maybe they're not. Maybe our dogs dream of running away from veterinarians. I had dreams of Dr. Page wearing, more of a traditional French maid's outfit than the blue pantsuit that she always wore. In one dream, Dr. Page took out a special metal comb and ran it through my hair as I froze on the metal examination table. In another, she announced, heartworm, like that. What a day, goddamn, she said to me while checking Tapeworm's coat. I wondered how many veterinarians, percentage-wise, weren't Christians and used the Lord's name in vain, as I felt that they should, seeing as too many people abuse God's supposed creatures. I said, it's okay, Tapeworm, and lifted her to the table To the vet, I said, "Is it really amputate an eyeball?" "That woman's insane, you know," Dr. Page said. "Did you have enough time to talk to her? Did you gather that she's crazy?" I shrugged. I shook my head. "She's absolutely out of her mind. I'm scared of her, to be honest. If I could ever find a receptionist again who could be pleasant to people, I'd pay double just to have someone in here with me at all times." What kind of segue did I have to offer? I said, "My aunt spent some time in a mental institution in Milledgeville, Georgia. Nowadays, they'd say she was bipolar, but back then she was known mostly as completely nuts by people in my family." Dr. Page listened to Tapeworm's heart and lungs with a stethoscope. She checked her ears and said, "I bet your aunt wasn't convinced that government officials try to embed microchips into her." I said, "No, not making a connection between Holly and microchips. I thought of my aunt. We used to go visit her in the hospital when I was a kid. She called my father, her brother, Elvis Presley. She tried to strangle my mother one time, screaming out, 'I am not a vessel for your sticks and stones. I am not a vessel for your sticks and stones.' That might have been the last time we visited as a group. My mother called her sister-in-law a basket case over and over to anyone who would listen. I didn't get along very well with my mother. She forever contradicted Dad and belittled him whenever possible, bringing up how no one in my father's family could be trusted, what with the crazy gene. And maybe that's what drove me toward basket weaving, out of meanness, shortly after I graduated college with a degree in journalism, and shortly after my father shoved a garden hose in his muffler and led the business end into the cracked open window of his Buick. I said to Dr. Page, "Are you kidding me?" and tried to make eye contact without imagining her in a French maid's outfit. "That wasn't even her dog," Dr. Page said. "She goes around picking up strays, getting them shots, then dumps them back out. Or she offers to bring her neighbor's dog in to get their toenails clipped. And then she gets in here and asks that I scan her body for computer chips she's convinced have been implanted by the FBI." Dr. Page picked up her handheld scanner. "I scan the stray to make sure it's not a lost dog, and then I scan Holly." I said, "Man," I couldn't think of anything else to say and knew ahead of time what my next dream would involve with my veterinarian. Dr. Page replaced the scanner and picked up a syringe. "This is for rabies and parvo, plus a new strain of canine polio that's going around." At least that's what I heard. It was something that I didn't believe really struck down dogs. Tapeworm didn't flinch, though I held her muzzle shut just in case. Dr. Page said, "How old is Tapeworm now?" "Between 12 and 20, I said. "What a good dog," she said. Then, in that voice that's used by people who need to live where my father's sister spent most of her adult life, Dr. Page said, "Who's a good girl?" Yes, who's a good girl? That's right, you're a good girl." I cradled my dog and pulled her down to the floor. I said, "Damn." I meant, "Damn, you just ruined my respect for you." I said, "Have you ever found a microchip on Holly?" My vet laughed. "Sometimes I go beep when I'm scanning her just for fun." No, from what I understand, back when you could just park in front of an airport and walk in even if you weren't flying anywhere, Holly used to walk through the metal detectors. She used to take off her jewelry, you know, and walk through in hopes of setting the thing off. She touched my chest. Well, no, Dr. Page pushed me out of the examination room in a way to let me know gently that her time with Tapeworm was over. I walked back to the waiting room with my dog. Dr. Page took a different turn and ended up on the other side of the counter. She said, "Is Tapeworm on heartworm medication?" I said, "She's inside the house or with me. She never gets in a rabid animal situation. I have a privacy fence." "Mosquitoes transmit heartworm, Edward. Mosquitoes can pretty much find ways to buzz over fences." I felt like an idiot, of course. I said, "Oh, well then I guess she's not. You need some protection, especially now, what with the rain." I said, "Okay." She might have been flirting with me, what with that "you need some protection" comment. And Dr. Page turned to pick up a year's worth of HeartGuard Plus tablets. She said shots and checkup come to $100. The heartworm protection's $80. She typed on her computer, let's call it an even 180. I hadn't spent $180 on my own health care in the previous decade. I said, we need veterinary health care reform. Yeah, Dr. Page said. We need to make sure there's mental health coverage for that new girlfriend of yours, if you ask me, and for other people who've been in my life, I suppose. I thought maybe she made reference to Dr. Leck's accidental overdose of horse tranquilizers. I said, are you looking for a partner? I meant, of course, are you looking to bring another vet in here to help you out? Dr. Page said, I'm not a lesbian, Edward. Back in my dreams, I thought. That's such a cheap joke. Sorry about that, y'all. That's easy. I said, that's not what I meant, and handed over 9 $20 bills. That's the thing about basket weavers. We always have cash. Have fun with Holly, she said. Hope to see you again one day. I wanted to talk more, but the door opened and a man came in with a limping, beautiful mutt. I knew the guy. I saw him sometimes talking to himself down at Lorinda's diner, or I saw him driving slowly with his face dangerously close to his windshield. Dr. Page said, hey, Stet, what's up? He said, someone's setting traps around. There's a break. What should a divorced basket weaver do when tempted by a microchip-believing hippie woman intent on drinking before noon? I said to Tapeworm, you want to go to a bar? Does Tapeworm want to go for a ride to the bar? But I swear to fucking God, I said it all in a normal voice, as if I might be talking to a friend from college or my crazy aunt. Tapeworm Johnson said nothing. Tapeworm sat upright on the truck's bench seat and looked straight out the windshield, as good found stray bird dogs are wont to do. I drove down Scenic Highway 11 past my driveway and past Looper's landscape rock operation and past Lorinda's diner until, finally, I took a couple dirt roads and turned into Gus's place. I tried not to go to this particular bar on the Saluda River very often. One time I showed up there and 3 men hid behind the counter saying that someone had a gun outside. Another time I went in and a homeless drifter insisted that she was one of the premier book critics in the country. For the record, I would rather be in a bar with a possible gun toter on the loose than a drifter book critic. I remember telling Tapeworm that day, remind me to pay my tab immediately should someone next to me at the bar ever use the term postmodern. I parked next to Holly's VW, the only car in the gravel parking spots. Inside, Gus stood behind the counter, mouth dropped open, staring at Holly. She had leashed Loretta to one of the stools, which Loretta tipped over and dragged behind her in order to sniff my dog's butt. Haven't you ever ordered a scotch in Mr. Pibb? Holly asked me. Gus didn't close his mouth or move it visibly, though his eyes shifted my way. I said, I can't say I've ever gotten to that point. To Gus, I said, I'll have whatever you have on draft that's not light. Sanity arrives, Gus said. I'll even carry Mr. Pibb. Do they still make it? Holly scooted a stool a few inches my way and told me to sit down. She said, no, but I have a stockpile, and I thought maybe you did too. We've been to the veterinarians. We met at the vet's office. What a romantic story this will be one day. Tell your dog not to drag my stool around, Gus said. I got up, told my own dog to sit. She did, and I righted Loretta's stool and slid it over to the bar counter. To Gus, Holly said, well, then surprise me, but I can't drink beer. It has to be liquor and it can't be straight. Gus said, you got it. He turned around and stared at his bottles, picked out the vodka, then turned around and stared at his mixers in a cold box. No music played. The walls were bare. Those squares and rectangles of a different shade proved that Gus, at one time, kept something nailed up, which, I would bet, weren't Norman Rockwell reproductions. All my dogs used to start barking at 5 o'clock every morning, wanting to go outside, Holly said. Unless it was raining. If it rained, they all acted as if they didn't need to use the bathroom. So you know what I did? I bought one of those noise machines where you can click on to whales pinging or ocean surf, birds of the Amazon, and rain. I put it on a timer in the kitchen so it goes off at 4 o'clock every morning until 7. The dogs haven't figured it out yet. They sure don't whine and bark anymore until about 5 minutes after the machine clicks off. How about that? Pretty ingenious, huh? Gus placed a martini glass in front of Holly. He said, vodka and Jarritos. It's some kind of mango soda all the Guatemalans order. Cheers. Holly said, I may not be pronouncing that Jarritos right, but it's around where I live. Holly said, cheers. And I thought about lifting my glass, but I said, that's not your dog, and pointed at Loretta. Holly downed her poor man's screwdriver as if it were a shooter. She held her chin down to her throat and grimaced. Gus wiped his hands on what may have been the first bar towel ever made. It looked like a nicotine-stained tatter of cheesecloth. He said, I normally wait until noon, and pulled a can of Schlitz out of the cooler. Holly said, "Whoo, that went straight through me. Can you watch my dog? I have to pee." I nodded. And then, of course, I went through her pocketbook that she left on the bar. I found a flask, a pack of that rolling tobacco, some papers, and 2 rolls of quarters. She had a skein of uncompromised $2 scratch-off tickets. Holly had some kind of Friend of the World Wildlife Fund membership card and another from PETA. Gus said, "Do you know her?" in a whisper. I said, "Do you?" "She's been in here before. One time she brought in a snapping turtle, lodged in one of those cat litter boxes with a top that snaps on. Scared the shit out of my customers. That thing kept shooting its head out like a foot-long pecker." I said, "The vet says she's nuts." I found no driver's license, social security card, credit card, or passport. Who doesn't have those things outside of people on the lam, children under the age of 15, or illegal aliens who sit around drinking Jarritos mango soda in their spare time? Gus cleared his throat. I understood it to be the international signal for she's coming out of the restroom. I shuffled everything back into her purse, looked down at the dogs, said, "Hey, Loretta," and noticed the dog didn't look up at me. Her name is not Loretta, I thought. "Sure, she's my dog," Holly said upon her return. "It's my dog. Did that bitch Janie Page say I brought in dogs that weren't mine? Why would I do that? She's hated me since I started going there. I'd go somewhere else, but the next vet's something like 30 miles away. She's hated me. You wouldn't believe how many women hate me." My ex-wife used to say the same thing. That's what made me so surprised when she left for someone named Michel, before I learned that it was someone named Michel, a French-Canadian guy who'd come down south in order to write a book on folk artists. Gus said to Holly, "You want another? If you drink them that fast, I can make you a triple and put it in a regular glass like Edwards." Tapeworm Johnson barked twice for some reason and began panting. She looked at Loretta, then chewed toward the base of her own tail. Holly said, "Hell, man, if you have a tumbler, I'll take a double, triple. I'm finished for the day. I've finished my work for the day. I've done my job for the most part." I couldn't tell if she wanted me to ask what she did for a living or if I was supposed to comprehend that taking someone else's dog to a vet, getting 10 of its toenails clipped, and having her own neck area scanned for microchips constituted a full day's activities. So I was happy when Gus asked, "What kind of work is it you got lets you be done before noon? I want that job unless it's third shift." I said, "Me too," just to be one of the boys. I didn't even want the flexibility of being a basket weaver, to be honest. In another life, I kind of wanted to be an astronaut, seeing as by then they'd have most of the kinks worked out. Holly said, "You know, I do what I do. I've been a couple things in corporate America, then I got out before the bubble burst. Now I do what I do. Right now I'm helping some people raise money and awareness toward the plight of the Nepalese. I'm a fundraiser. If I feel like working in the middle of the night, I call potential donors in Japan. I have an altitude training tent that I sleep in and everything, just in case I get a call and need to fly to the Himalayas on short notice." Gus said nothing. I stared at Holly way too long, trying to gather it all in. I said, "I've seen those things. Hey, what's your last name anyway?" Holly said, "I'm down to 15% oxygen." On my way to the men's room an hour later, I thought about how Holly might have killed some brain cells. I had seen a documentary one time about some mountain bikers readying themselves for the Leadville 100 out in Colorado. They had slept in an altitude training tent for 3 months. None of them could tie their shoes or figure out a zipper, much less sing the national anthem or name 2 rivers east of the Mississippi. They could ride bikes up steep inclines, though. I thought, will it be immoral to have sex with a woman who's only using 15% of her brain? I thought, as bad as corporate America's doing, I'm glad Holly isn't involved with it now, only using 15% of her brain. I thought all kinds of things. I wondered how come I tuned Holly out with all her talk of Sherpas between my 1st and 5th beer, and obsessed with how Wanda would say, I told you so, like a mantra, should she have entered the bar. I daydreamed about Dr. Page showing up not wearing scrubs and telling me what a good, faithful friend I'd been for tapeworm. I thought about how I couldn't get so drunk that I got talked into donating a series of honeysuckle vine baskets to the indigenous people of Nepal so they could carry them atop their heads like indigenous people do. I read the graffiti in the men's room and wondered if whoever wrote the jokes in your hand, Stet, referred to the same man Dr. Pate greeted at her office as I left. I came back to the bar proper to find Gus alone. Out the window, I could see Holly's Volkswagen not parked next to my truck. Gus stood leaned over the drink box, wringing his hands with the bar towel. I said, where the fuck's my dog? I walked straight out the door and ran to my truck. Gus followed. I yelled, which way did that woman go? He said, she paid the tab. I yelled out, tapeworm, 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 in the hope that she'd merely gone out the door, that she went looking for me. She took both dogs, Gus said. She paid the tab and left me a big old tip, and then she said she needed to walk the dogs. I heard her car start up and the door close, but I wasn't thinking. I didn't want to cry in front of Gus. I got in my truck and drove way too fast and impaired, away from the direction where I lived. Wanda leaving me was one thing, but losing tapeworm would have sent me to Gus's place daily. I rolled down the windows and yelled for my dog about every 50 yards. When the road finally came to a 4-way stop sign, I pulled over and listened for the remnants of a puttering VW engine. When I called a 911 operator and explained the situation, unstable woman who steals dogs, thinks there's a microchip implanted between her shoulder blades, fundraiser for the impoverished goat herders of Nepal. The man on the other end informed me that it was a felony to misuse the 911 system, but I felt pretty sure it was only a misdemeanor. I made a U-turn, slowed down to see no one parked at the bar, and continued until I got to Dr. Page's vet clinic to see if she had this Holly woman's phone number and address. The lot was empty. I'm not too proud to say that I opened my glove compartment, found some old paper napkins from Captain Del Kell's galley bell, wiped my eyes, and blew my nose. Tapeworm sat in the waiting room alone, the handle of her leash looped around that doorknob attached to the counter. I said, God damn, I'm glad you're here, and bent down to hug my dog. Dr. Page came out of the back. Maybe I blurted out some blubbering sounds. I said, that Holly woman stole my dog. Dr. Page said, what are you doing back here? She reached down and scratched Tapeworm's jowl. Did you forget something? I said, I'm serious. That Holly woman stole Tapeworm when I went to take a leak. My veterinarian shook her head. She looked at me as if I made everything up. Then she walked over to one of the end tables and said, you really ought to reconsider getting a chip for Tapeworm and some of this lost pet medical insurance. I untethered my dog. Later, I would blame my irrational thought processes either on too many beers in too short a time or from just thinking about an oxygen deprivation tent. I might only be a honeysuckle vine basket weaver who supplies a number of arts and crafts galleries in the South, but I know a scam when I see one, I said to Dr. Page. You hire out Holly to pretend to be crazy, then she kidnaps dogs, and you get some kind of kickback from the pet insurance and microchip companies. You can't fool me. You're not going to get this one on me. Get this by on me. Dr. Page didn't react one way or the other immediately. In future dreams, I would see her standing in my bedroom, wearing scrubs, acting nonplussed as a woven trivet. She would shake her head one way, her index finger working in tandem. I would feel guilty as I did standing there with my dog's leash handle in one hand and a pamphlet for the lost pet insurance in the other. I could have walked out indignantly. I could have asked her for I could have asked for Dr. Page to forget veterinarian client privileges and give me Holly's address and phone number so I could run her down and seek justice. Instead, I stood there, frozen, my dog wagging her tail ready to go for another ride, and wondered if this type of situation finally caused my first vet to overdose. Maybe Crazy Holly's like that Christo artist who covers things up, then unveils them anew. Maybe she wanted you to realize what you'd taken for granted in a pet, Dr. Page said. I was stunned. How could a woman awash in Norman Rockwell prints understand the avant-garde work of Christo? I asked her if she'd like to meet somewhere, like Gus's bar, when she got off work. I couldn't think of anything else to say and knew that no apology would work. Dr. Page said it might be best if I leave. I could not make eye contact. I felt empty. When I asked my dog's veterinarian if she could sell me some horse tranquilizers, I tried to make it come off as a joke. I might have said, corporate America. I might have thought, choke collar. Thanks.
You guys ready? No. So, we decided, for a variety of reasons, of which I cannot all divulge yet, but we decided we're going to do this Q&A thing, this question and answer, where the audience can get a chance to ask the writers, authors questions. I thought I would ask the first one, and I thought I would ask to both of you, and you can come up here and talk in the mic so we can all hear it. Could you maybe talk about the benefits of an MFA program versus working a terrible job, and how you broached that conversation with your students?
Well, I have nothing against terrible jobs. I think terrible jobs are fine. My students, I teach these 11th and 12th graders, like they're in the school kind of like that bad TV show Fame, and they're smart, and they go off to Brown and Harvard and Kenyon and Chicago, and they have gotten into Washington University, but this kid decided to go to Williams. But the thing that they don't have is any experience, and so a lot of their stories as 11th and 12th graders, or even college kids, is I'm working in the school library. That's the only job they've ever had, so they haven't done stuff. You know, I went to MFA program in 84 to 86, and it was a different. MFA programs, to me, when I go visit these places, seem to be a little bit on the backstabby side. And back when I went, and I think before, it was kind of, you got 2 years, write like hell, get it done, and go out there and you know, do it. And there's a lot of drinking and drugs and all that, but you kind of did all your work in the morning and did that. I have friends like, well, he just passed away, his name's William Gay. He never went to college, and my buddy Ron Rash never got an MFA. They've worked and worked and worked, and they have things, and that's beautiful writing. I'm not really answering this question. Well, now, just ask me again. Is it kind of coming? Am I just shooting birdshot in the air? I like MFA programs, you know. But I think it's more about let's learn how to write and get some kind of figure out how to do a schedule. You got 2 years; it's not going to happen the rest of your life. And that's about all I got to say about that. Like Forrest Gump.
I can be real quick. I don't have an MFA. I have a MLS, a Master's in Library Science. And it's an excellent degree if you want to go into writing, because you can pay your bills and your rent, and you have medical insurance, and you have Social Security. And then if you're lucky and all the forces of the universe come together and you write a book and it does well, then you can decide, okay, well, let me pursue that. So I guess I always tell my students, because I'm a cautious person, I always ask them to think about what they ultimately want out of life or how they ultimately want to live. And most of them want medical insurance and to pay the rent and to have a fine meal now and then, in which case then I always say, well then, get a job that's going to provide that and then write on the side and keep writing. That's how I did it. I can't really answer the question because I don't have an MFA, so I have nothing to compare it to,
Well, I asked for a reason because so many of my students, they want to go right into an MFA program right after they graduate. And so many of our interns, they want to go right into an MFA program right after graduating. And I'm always wondering, well, what are y'all going to write about? And so I noticed that y'all, both of you, have written about life experiences. So I was just curious because there are pros and cons to both. So there's not an answer. I was just wondering what y'all had to say. You won't get like hooked off the stage because you answered wrong. All right, are there more questions? Yes.
I have a question for both, but we'll start with Janice. So often, when we write about the page and, how it's going to look on the page, how it comes across on the page. But it sounds like to me, just listening to you, and I'm just guessing and I'm asking you, you often think about how it's going to sound and how it's going to sound out loud. And it as, I don't want to say performance because I don't mean that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. I write for the page, but part of that writing for the page is the way the words sound. So it's not like I'm saying to myself, what would you like to perform this? I'm writing because I enjoy, the alliteration. I enjoy the way the sounds are working together and the way it sounds very fluid. And so I write what I enjoy, and that's what I enjoy. But part of my editing process or my revision process, is I will read my poem out loud, and when it doesn't sound right to my ear, or that, I go back in and I start rewriting. So I think that's the answer to the question.
And then for Mr. Singleton.
My name's just George. No one ever.
George.
Yeah.
One of my favorite writers, he's actually a friend of mine and known him a long time, is Lee K. Abbott. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
And you both strike me doing something that I really like, which is, I don't want to call him it's a twist on the anti-hero. Who wants to use that term? But the use of humor and the use of those people motoring through this life, struggling with things like going to the vet and hooking up and, all those things very well. But what happens is something else comes out of that besides the humor.
Yeah. Yeah, the Lee K. Abbott does as well, like in what are those, I want to say Deming, New Mexico. I'm not quite sure if that's the name of it.
That
There's
is,
a lot of golf stories, but I'm not saying that bad. I mean, they're good, they're great stories. He's a great short story hero. Yeah, what I hope I'm doing is, Samuel Beckett said there's nothing funnier than human misery. And that goes all the way back to catharsis. I mean, it goes back to Aristotle talking about, okay, so Oedipus killed his daddy and screwed his mama and stabbed his eye out. And I'm glad my life sucks, but I ain't that. and Beckett may be thinking more about, I don't know what he was thinking about, but you watch the Three Stooges, you say, man, that guy got hit in the head with a frying pan. My life sucks, but I hadn't been hit in the head with a frying pan lately. And so I think that's what I'm trying to do is try to write comedic stuff, but a lot of times it comes out a little bit. I mean, I can feel this room go, uh-oh, maybe we shouldn't have been laughing when I read this line about before my father stuck a garden hose in his muffler. And I should have stopped and went, ha ha, I got y'all better, But yeah. That answered that kind of.
You didn't need to answer.
I hadn't heard that. Lee Cab, that's good. I'm glad. Tell him, hey. I met him once down in Clemson, South Carolina. Nice man. As a matter of fact, tell him he owes me like a pack of cigarettes. I quit smoking. Give me a cigarette.
And he did that to us. He owes me a pack of cigarettes. He did that to us at a literary feast. Yeah. All right. Is there another question? Yes, Treasure.
I am from Mississippi, and I feel very, very Southern most of the time, no matter where I go. And I noticed that you had themes about the South and Alabama. And of course, on your biography, it says Southern Gonzo. And I wanted to ask each of you, what is the best thing, the most beautiful thing that you feel about the South, and what is the negative that you feel being a Southern writer or being associated with the South brings?
Let me go first. I got an answer for that one, kind of.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Is it my answer?
Huh?
Is it gonna be my answer?
I don't know what your answer. Mississippi. I'm going to Mississippi like tomorrow or the day. I gotta go to Arkansas. Live Arkansas.
You're going to Mississippi?
Yeah, you need a ride. I'm serious. I'm going to Jackson and Greenwood and Oxford.
Oh, okay, go
Yeah,
ahead. I went
yeah.
to school in Jackson, but.
Oh, I love it. I love that area. Well, the most there's all that crap, like Faulkner, history's not past, is not even past, or whatever he said. I don't know what he said. What I like about where one time I had to write some kind of little essay about it, and there's kind of like there's Reconstruction, and then there's like the New South, and then I think there's something called the New South, but I spell it N-U-N-U, New South. Because right now, where I live in this little area called Dacusville, South Carolina, there's a population of about 600, it's old farmland, but now there are emu and emo. I would shoot those people, but that's a different story. Emu and llama farmers and a lot of my next door neighbor has a $120,000 horse. I mean, what the hell? There's no zoning where we live. They live in an antebellum mansion. I live in a little regular house. So you have Old South, sometimes racist. You have a New South, kind of nouveau riche and educated. And then now where it has so many people in New South, in Greenville, South Carolina, there's a bunch of people from Germany and Japan and France that come. That area hasn't been killed by the recession. There's a bunch of factories. Unfortunately, it's not union, or for me, not union workers. So there's a whole it truly is a melting pot now. You have that history. When I go, let's say I don't really drink in South Carolina. I don't drink in my hometown anymore, so I try to get out of town about 5 times a week. But you can go in this great little bar like this and have a great time, but you go out and there's going to be somebody from Bob Jones University handing you a tract and saying you're going to go to hell. I mean, what the? And for fiction writer, it's just perfect because it's just, protagonist wants something, antagonist stands in the way. That's what I love. I don't even have to think up shit. I just sit around and go, oops, there's another one. What I'm embarrassed about the South, and I was talking to Scott earlier, I'm real embarrassed by my state when it comes to politics, and a lot of states. Hell, it doesn't even have to be the South anymore. I mean, it's kind of. Well, let's just talk about the South. It's just some racist shit going on that I just go, I don't get it. And I was talking to Richard. I had this friend who died. All my friends have died. Named Barry Hannon, who's a great, great writer, but I can't.
Okay, and he's from Meridian, Mississippi,
really
which is where I'm from.
Yeah.
Barry
I
Hannon.
love Barry, and it was a great. Every sentence is beautiful, but I can't teach him because he kind of uses the N-word a lot. I just can't. It makes me uncomfortable, and it didn't make him uncomfortable. He just read a story and go, "What the hell, man?" That kind of takes some balls to, and it's kind of stupid balls to do that. I think. That's a long-winded. What's your name? Treasure. Did that answer any of it?
Yes, it did.
Okay, thanks, Treasure. Let me know if you need a ride.
I lived in born, raised Vernon, Alabama. We left when I was 8 years old, moved to Lincoln, Nebraska, and I now live in Illinois. So I feel very divided in terms of regional, but the best thing about the South is family, and the worst thing about the South is family.
Family, yeah. Yeah, that's good.
All right, so you probably don't want to know the score, really, but let me just say that it's not as bad as it was Friday when they came back. So, it's 5-1.
What inning?
Fifth, and Kelly's pitching. So, all right.
Is Kelly with the car? So Carpenter he's out
Yeah,
already?
they chased him away, yeah. All right, so other scores. November 19th, we will be featuring Allison Pellegrin, who we tried having last season, and her plane got completely screwed up because of all the New Orleans Mardi Gras stuff. They rerouted her to New York and then Chicago. No, she's supposed to be in St. Louis, like now. Anyway, she's one of our favorite poets. We publish her a lot in River Styx, so she will be reading. And then also Michael Nye, who you all might remember was Shaney's predecessor as a managing editor of River Styx. So that's November 19th. We would like to thank George Singleton and Janice N. Harrington for reading so nicely and so wonderfully for us. We would, of course, also like to thank Left Bank Books for selling their books right here, and they're still available. We would, of course, like to thank Aaron and Matthew for letting us do this at the Tavern for 2 months. And lastly, we would like to thank you for coming. See you all in November. Good night.
Thank you.